What's up guys, today I'm going to be showing you 7 different ways to curl a barbell. Now it's no secret that a barbell curl targets your biceps. However, by changing certain factors such as the position of your elbow, grip width, and hand placement, you can actually emphasize specific portions of your upper arm. While there are many other ways of applying these techniques, such as using cables, dumbbells, or lying on a bench, utilizing different variations with a barbell makes it easy to progressively overload and may come in handy if you're ever short on equipment. So if you're looking to keep things simple in order to grow your arms, sit back and enjoy the show. The Gun Show. Tickets are free if you like and subscribe. Now with any barbell curl, your muscles are going to perform 2 primary functions. The first is elbow flexion, which is the bending of the elbow joint, and the second is forearm supination, which is the rotation of the forearm to point your palms up. Now contrary to popular belief, the bicep is not the only muscle that contributes to these 2 movements. There's actually a multitude of muscles involved, so let's quickly break it down. Starting with the obvious, your biceps are composed of 2 heads, a short head making up the inner portion, and a long head making up the outer portion. Each of these heads contributes to both flexion and supination, but the degree at which they work relies heavily on shoulder and elbow position, which we'll cover later in the video. The next muscle involved is the brachioradialis, which lies on the back of your forearm. This muscle assists in the elbow flexion portion and can be emphasized with an overhand grip. Similarly, the brachialis, which sits underneath the bicep, also assists in elbow flexion and can be emphasized with a more neutral grip. And finally, to assist with supination, the supinator muscle on your forearm will activate as well. Now I know that's a lot to throw at you from the start, but it's good to get a sense of which muscles are active during this movement and how exactly they contribute. That being said, it's important to understand that no matter which curl variation you choose, all of these muscles will activate in order to carry out the rep. However, as mentioned previously, you can emphasize certain portions to bias one muscle over another, but just keep in mind, every muscle will work to some degree regardless of your decision. Therefore, with the exception of your elbow position, hand placement, and grip width, all curl variations utilize a very similar technique. Thus, the setup of the exercise doesn't really change. So let's cover that now. First, grip the bar firmly in the palms of your hands with your thumbs wrapped around, unless otherwise noted. Then, take a few steps back and hold the bar directly in front of your thighs so that your forearms are in contact with your hips and your elbows are tucked in. From here, retract your scapula and depress your shoulders, then contract your abs and squeeze your glutes to straighten out your posture. This gets you into the starting position where your chest is up, your shoulders are rolled back, and your arms are fully extended. Keep this in mind before starting any of the variations on this list, but now that we have everything out of the way, let's do some curls. Coming in at the number 1 spot, we've got the bread and butter for your biceps, the most basic variation of any and all gym exercises, the strict curl. Now these are going to target both heads of the bicep evenly since your elbow is positioned by your side. To perform this, use an underhand grip with your hands shoulder width apart and get into the starting position. Then curl the weight up in an arc by turning your pinkies outwards to supinate your forearms until your biceps are fully contracted. Keep your elbows locked in place and your knuckles aligned with your wrists, and lift the weight up to your chest by moving your forearms up without pushing your elbows forward. Remember to squeeze at the top and control the eccentric, letting your arms fully extend at the bottom of the rep. Up next in the number 2 spot is the drag curl. Now this is a move you don't see very often, despite it being one of the best ways to overload the long head of the bicep. Now the long head makes up the outer portion of your upper arm, which is responsible for giving your bicep its peak. To emphasize it, you need your shoulder in extension, which occurs when your elbows are placed behind your body. Now if you have access to dumbbells, the incline curl is a great way to achieve this, but if not, you're in luck, because the drag curl has you covered. By dragging the weight up, you actually push your elbows back, which then extends your shoulders behind you, placing emphasis on the long head. To perform this, use an underhand grip with your hands shoulder width apart and get into the starting position. Then, instead of curling the weight in an arc, lift the bar straight up towards the ceiling, keeping it as close to your body as possible. Drive your elbows back while keeping your knuckles aligned with your wrists until your forearms are parallel to the ground. Then, squeeze at the top and lower the bar straight down under control to get back into the starting position. Moving on to number 3 is the seated barbell curl. Again, not an exercise you often see, but it's a great way to emphasize the short head of the bicep. The short head makes up the inner portion of your upper arm, which is responsible for giving your bicep its width. Contrary to the long head, the short head works with shoulder flexion, which occurs when your elbows are in front of your body. Now a preacher curl does this just fine, but unfortunately, not everyone has access to that. So to compensate, the seated curl is a fantastic alternative. Not only does this place your elbows in front of you, but it also completely removes the bottom half of the movement, making it impossible to use momentum. With every rep starting from a completely dead position, your biceps are forced to work much harder, especially since you can't swing the weight. The technique is very similar to a strict curl, except instead of keeping your elbows fixed by your side, let them drift forward slightly to increase the range of motion. That way, you can curl the weight up to your shoulders as opposed to your chest, allowing the short head to take over. Up next at number 4, we got one of, if not the most iconic bicep exercise there is, Arnold's legendary method of adding size to his arms, the barbell cheat curl. This exercise is going to target all parts of your bicep through the use of eccentric overload, which just means utilizing heavy weight under a slow and controlled negative. Now you might be wondering, why is it even beneficial to do cheat curls in the first place? Wouldn't a stricter variation always be better? And that just isn't the case. You see, the whole point of doing cheat curls is to overload the eccentric, which just means to slowly control the negative portion of the rep. But in any curl variation, the hardest part is always lifting the weight up, so on the way down, you're never going to utilize as much weight as you could. So in order to make that portion truly difficult, use momentum to cheat the weight up so that you can use a heavier weight on the way down to really overload the bicep in that position. To perform this, use an underhand grip with your hands shoulder width apart and get into the starting position. Then, before you initiate the curl, slightly hinge your hips back and tilt your upper body forward. Then, curl the weight up by bending your elbows and thrusting your hips to bring your torso back into an upright position. Use just enough momentum to get the weight moving, and don't be afraid to let your elbows slightly drift forward to curl the weight up to your shoulders. Then, squeeze at the top and slowly resist the weight back down while slightly bending your torso forward until your arms are fully extended. Again, this exercise heavily depends on how well you execute the eccentric, so really take your time to perform it, ideally for anywhere from 3 to 5 seconds. Taking over the number 5 spot is the wide grip barbell curl. Now, gripping the bar with a wider than shoulder width grip places your shoulders in external rotation, which some believe produces a better contraction in the short head, as the tension at the top is shifted towards the inner portion of your upper arm. Now, the evidence behind this isn't set in stone, but if you're looking to add width to your arms, this isn't a bad one to try out. With a wider grip, it's much easier to supinate your forearms, so you don't actively have to think of turning your pinkies outwards. As a result, it can be much more comfortable for your forearms, since it may relieve tension if you're having trouble turning your wrists. Additionally, the angle in which your arms are placed relative to your body actually reduces the range of motion normally required. This allows you to lift a heavier weight under a similar line of force, which can help if you're trying to break through a plateau. So if you're looking to give this one a shot, simply utilize the exact same technique as you would for a strict curl, with the exception of a wider than shoulder width grip. Staying on the topic of grip width, the next type of curl is a narrow grip curl. Contrary to a wide grip, a narrow grip places your shoulders in internal rotation, which some believe produces a better contraction in the long head, as the tension at the top is shifted towards the outer portion of your upper arm. Again, the evidence here is not exactly concrete, but it's definitely worth trying out if you're looking to add size to your peak. That being said, a closer grip makes it much more difficult to supinate your forearms, meaning that you have to actively think of turning your pinkies outwards to keep the tension on your biceps. However, if this is something you struggle with, implementing a narrow grip might actually be beneficial in order to help practice this technique. And due to the increase in forearm supination needed, it's actually a great way to improve wrist mobility and grip strength as well. So if you're looking to give this one a shot, simply utilize the same technique as you would for a strict curl, with the exception of a closer than shoulder width grip. Last, and definitely not least, we have the most underrated exercise on this list, the reverse curl. By utilizing a pronated grip, your forearms are able to contribute much more than they would during a regular curl, because the biceps are placed in a biomechanically disadvantageous position. Since the biceps are the primary motivator of supination, removing this component allows other muscles to flex the elbow, such as the brachialis and brachioradialis. Both of these muscles activate at a much higher degree when you employ an overhand grip, since neither of them are able to contribute to supination. So if your main goal is to build your forearms, this exercise is a great one to include. To perform this, grab the bar with a pronated grip at around shoulder width, with either your thumbs wrapped over or around. Then apply the same technique as you would for a strict curl, except instead of keeping your knuckles aligned with your wrists, it's actually